Do men want helpless women? I saw this really, I don't know what to call it, but it was interesting, I guess. I saw this really interesting episode of the Fresh and Fit podcast. I don't really watch that podcast, but lately they've been in the news because they said some awful things about black women, just self-hating. Their channel promotes a lot of toxic masculinity, and I really don't like to highlight, channels like that. But they had Hafiz in the roommates, on their podcast, and I have respect. I like the roommates. I like their content. They seem more impartial. They seem more balanced with their perspective. In fact, they're one of the few YouTubers in the manosphere that happen to be more balanced. So I see them and I'm like, okay, I'll click on the link because I'm not watching Fresh and Fit or Dumb and Dumber. But okay, so here we go. Let me react to it. It started out good, and I'm gonna react to the way that he's talking to her, the way that the room is interacting. Basically they had a conversation with a few ladies, and they were talking about what women want, what men want, all that jazz. And anyway, I want to react to sort of the way that they're having conversations, the way he's being respectful or disrespectful, how other people in the room are either being respectful or disrespectful. I'm going to talk about all of that, so let's check this out. You're watching the Kenim O show, and my name is Kenim.
Why are men so intimidated by the idea of coming home to a independent woman?
We're not intimidated. It's
I
a
would
headache.
think that an independent woman, independence is an attractive quality.
No.
How would you define independence?
I mean, in simple terms, a woman who doesn't need a man but wants a man and wants to be also. I mean, I can provide in my own ways, and the man will provide in his own ways. However that dynamic works, it'll work.
Okay, so you said a woman who doesn't need a man but wants a man.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by I'm trying to understand what do you mean by not?
I mean, I'm not a child. I don't need a parent. I want to be in a partnership. I want somebody who will, if I'm younger than him, for example, I want him to strive to raise me to his level. Just like I feel like a top tier man are.
I think there's already a problem, at least in my view. You're talking about somebody rising you up to their level. I get okay, if he's older, that's the case, but I don't know. You'll find that a lot of these, how would I don't want to sound. I don't even want to sound like a hater, but a lot of these modern women, a lot of modern women feel as though they want feminism, they want equality, but they still want to have their cake and eat it too, and play into this idea of traditional roles. You're looking for someone to lift you up. I don't know about all that, but let's keep going.
Are drawn to people who they want to be their peers eventually. They like lifting people up, and I think that in a relationship it should be the same.
Well, I think for me, I think you're viewing it as a woman. I think it's hard to view it as a man. I think it's a reality thing because there's certain things that you value that men wouldn't value. So, for example, if let's say you made $200,000 a year, right, and your man made $50,000 a year, you would eventually want him to get there. Is that fair to say, ladies?
Absolutely.
And if he was lazy and he didn't want to get there, he wanted to stay at 50,000, would that be a turnoff? If he didn't want to get better?
Yeah, it's not about laziness. Here's another example. If I wanted to study something and I knew that I wouldn't be able to work for the next 8 years, medical school, for example, then if my man is willing to support me, I want him to eventually be happy with my success.
Yeah. So let me finish my example, and I want to answer your question. So the point is that you guys want a man to get on your level. So guys, if a woman was making $50,000 and you're making 200,000, do you want her to make 200,000? Is that a priority for you guys?
No,
not a priority.
So you see, guys, they don't view it that way.
Okay, so they're talking about a very small percentage of men that are able to, globally, that are able to earn that much money. When you look at society, most people don't earn $200,000. So he's now only talking about a quote unquote high value man, which is in my view, high value man just because you earn $200,000 a year, that doesn't make you high value. But most men just don't have that much money. So you're really talking about a small pool of men. It's probably 1% of men globally. I don't know what percent in the US, but I'll put the statistics here. But that's a really small pool of men, and that doesn't represent men in general.
You gotta think about it. Men are conditioned to protect and provide for thousands of years. So men are not looking for a teammate.
And that's not, again, he says men with the umbrella term, and it's just when you think about it, the fact that only 1% of men can actually earn that kind of money to support their family independently, right? Yeah, so when you look at the average man who's not able to provide that amount of money, you are looking for a teammate because you actually can't necessarily survive. You can't necessarily survive. I'm sure you can survive on your own. Well, not all. Most people in the world can't survive on their own. But let's say we're talking about people that are able to stand on their own 2 feet, right? For you to provide for a family on your own as a man, for most men, that's it's not normal. It's not the norm. So you are looking for a teammate. And he said it's such an interesting choice of words. Men are looking for a teammate. Well, if you're not looking for a teammate, I think he's talking about financially they're not looking for a teammate, because at the end of the day, in the traditional setting, a man still is looking for a teammate to take care of the house, take care of him, take care of his kids or the kids, to make sure the house is in order while he goes out and makes the money.
It's like the best way I can break it down.
But it's not about doing. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
I apologize. But it's not about doing what they do.
Why is she
It's about
apologizing?
doing me and being supported and
So
supported emotionally and.
Here's a problem. A man with options can choose, and unfortunately, you're the worst option. No, disrespect.
Most men don't have options. You see, so they keep this narrative that they love to push this narrative, but most men are not that at the end of the day. And sure, most women want most women are looking at a high earner XYZ, but I think eventually, well, that's what most women are looking for, right? But most men are not that. But he's talking about a high earner. He's not talking about most men.
No disrespect, because here's the reality. There's two guys, right?
For a high, quote unquote, man that earns, I'm not even going to call it a high value man because it's not, but a man that earns over a certain amount of money. Okay. I'll keep going.
The guy that makes 500,000, all things are equal. They're both handsome. They're both tall. They're both successful in their own sense, right? One is a successful teacher making 50,000. One is a successful doctor making 500,000. Which one is more attractive?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I blinked out a second ago.
Okay, cool. So there's two guys, and everything is
Stupid.
equal. Okay.
That's another problem with this podcast. They don't bring the most intelligent women. I'm not coming for her like saying she's not intelligent. I mean, but like, that was a simple question. Like, come on. So they bring this fresh and fit. They bring this pool of women that are like coming out of nightclubs and just lack intelligence generally. And they come and they beat them down in these podcasts and fight them on these points. And obviously you're going to win an argument if you're, arguing with someone that's like drunk or on drugs or whatever, So for me, it's like, dude, like, why don't you bring intelligent women and especially women that can articulate themselves? Why don't you bring them on the show and have that conversation and see where that goes? Then you can really measure your strength, right?
Guys, and everything is equal. Okay.
Thank you.
One of them makes 50.
Well, see, and the idiots. They now like press the button that says stupid. Like, are you serious? So then you bring her on your podcast. You try to belittle her. Like, come on.
One of them makes 50,000. One of them makes 500,000. Mm-hmm. Which one is more attractive?
And look how disrespectful Fit is. Like, looking at the corner, like, oh my God, she's so dumb. She can't even get. Why don't you bring intelligent women on your podcast? Because you know that you can't even handle them in a conversation.
Everything is equal.
It's okay to say the truth.
I know.
It's okay to say the truth, right?
Listen.
First of all, there's no such thing as everything is equal, right? It's not, there's no, there's, there's going to be one person that you like slightly more than the other. And they think it's always going to be the one with more money, but not necessarily. Sometimes somebody could, just be that slightly more, maybe emotionally intelligent or slightly more attractive, that you're just more attracted to them. You're just more attracted to them. And it's just never going to be exactly the same. And that's what they're missing out on. Unless they're talking about, I think what they're really focusing on, again, the kind of women that they're bringing to these podcasts, their values are not that of sort of like getting married necessarily or starting a family necessarily. Their values seems to be more sort of like, well, I won't say this girl necessarily, but I just mean in general, their podcast. They're getting like 22-year-olds that are coming out of nightclubs. What does a 22-year-old know about building a life and looking for a husband? Like, that's not your priority at that age. And look at how they're laughing at her, which is so disrespectful. I'm going to play back a little bit. I'm going to play that part again. Just 3 minutes in.
Sorry, I blinked out a second ago.
Okay, cool. So there's two
LLA.
guys, and everything is equal. Okay.
Thank you.
one of them makes 50,000. One of them makes 500,000. Which one is more attractive? Everything is equal.
It's okay to say the truth.
I know.
It's okay to say the truth, right?
Listen.
The feminism in her won't allow it.
No. I'll answer honestly.
I want an equal partner.
I'm just as mesmerized by fancy, shiny things as any other person is. I find that sometimes men who have a lot become entitled.
Listen. I just said everything was equal.
Okay, then yeah, for sure the man has more. Because life would be better.
Because you value that more. So what you got to understand is women who think independence, you like that in men.
Yeah.
A man being independent, a man not needing you, a man to be able to take care of his stuff on his own. That's what you value in men. Men don't want that in women. Because the reality of the matter is, when a woman is really turned on by a man, when a woman is really in love with a man, when she really respects him, she becomes utterly dependent upon him because she does not want him to leave.
So here's what I don't like. My biggest fear is to lose my independence and to rely on somebody else.
And know where that comes from? Where does that come from?
Ooh. I think that's the fear of all human beings, to lose their independence. And those are especially those who have experienced freedom.
I don't know. I mean, I've been independent since I was 18, and I think it's a very important thing to me.
I know, but where does that fear come from?
I don't know. I don't want to rely on anyone. I wasn't brought up to rely on anyone, and I don't think
exactly.
But like that comes from, I mean, I think in general, because obviously she's struggling with articulating herself, and I'm not going to put words into her mouth, but that need, I would say, like from a societal level, looking at it, where does the fear come from? It comes from a history of men abusing women, not just a history, a present day men abusing women. And we've seen it so much. And I'm thinking globally. I'm always going to come globally. A lot of people are just like thinking about America. I'm thinking globally, right? And even in America too, we've heard too many stories of women who, they had, and this is before, like, I'm thinking about before even like the court systems caught up and started creating like systems to ensure that women get a percentage of their husband's income. But we've heard too many stories, especially like if you hear about people in the third world, you hear stories about women being utterly dependent on their husbands sort of like abusing them in the relationship. And then what happens? Or they're not able to leave and they're unhappy. The women end up being unhappy in those situations and they're unable to leave because they can't take care of themselves. Or and you hear too many stories about men abusing women. That is where the fear comes from men historically and presently being predatory. That is where the fear comes from.
So what happened in childhood, either your experience showed you or somebody communicated that to you. Because you're talking about, I have a fear. You can't live your life according to fear. Imagine me saying, I have a fear of crap.
The world communicated that statistics show that men have been predatory to women in many, many ways in history, present, all of that. That is where it comes from.
Actually on a plane, I can never get on the plane.
Damn.
So your whole relationship movement is based upon
Fear
a fear
of men.
that's unhealthy. And so what I've noticed is a lot of women, when they move in a relationship,
The real thing is, if men want women to be able to want to depend on them, which I don't think anyone should depend on anyone. Everybody should be independent. But if a man wants a woman to fully trust them, right? To not come into that relationship with fear, men on a society level should work with other men, teaching them not to be predatory. That is really, and it's a men issue. That's really what it is.
it's based out of fear. You can't live your life based upon fear.
I think it's unhealthy to put yourself in situations where you could potentially be left with nothing.
But that's the mindset.
That's the fear.
You see how you're living your life?
See, he's now pushing on her like it's her fault. You're unhealthy. No. What is unhealthy is men being predatory.
You're living your life worst case scenario thinking. Imagine me saying, I don't want to start a business because if I open a business, I can lose all my money, because that's a risk of starting a business. You can put all your time, energy, effort, and money and research into a business and lose it all. So what happens is a lot of women have seen, either from divorces in their family, either from their...
That is human nature, to ensure that you understand the worst possible case scenario so you can prepare and secure yourself for the best and the worst. That is human nature. And what I think is so interesting about modern men is that they want to believe this falsehood that they are superior to women, which is a lie. They want to believe this false mentality that they are superior to women. And so they understand it in themselves when they want independence, and they refuse to accept it in women when women want independence. But I think what these men are looking for are dogs, are pets, are animals that are okay with not having independence. Or women that come from poverty, extreme poverty, and lack education, that are okay with not wanting independence because they have never been exposed to a free world and to independence. But when you come from freedom, when you come from independence, you will require it in your life. So we're talking about US context. This country is about independence. Every man for himself. Survival of the fittest. That is the world we live in. And I think that men have been spoiled historically because a lot of men believe that they are the fittest. But let us remember that fitness is not about physical strength. Because if it was about physical strength, lions would kill us. Have you seen a lion in a tug of war with humans? They would destroy us. What makes humans superior to animals? Well, we're not superior necessarily. But what makes us at the top of the food chain? We're called Homo sapiens. Do you know what Homo sapien means? It means wise man, because of intelligence. So it's a combination of intelligence, having the right physical form, the right physical body that we have. We're lucky. There are other animals that could potentially have been as intelligent as us, like dolphins, elephants, but they don't have the right physical form to create tools, to build things. They don't have the right physicality. So we were given intelligence, we were given the right physical form to further advance our intelligence, and we were given enough strength to beat most animals on the planet, right? So we don't have to be the strongest, but we are the wisest, and that's why we are who we are. Why do I bring this up? Because right now, in humanity, we are in the information era. What is more important in this era than it was in the industrial era and that was in other eras is intelligence. So who is the fittest in this world that we live in 2022? Who is the fittest? The most intelligent. That is who will win. And so I think that men need to accept that having physical strength does not qualify anymore in the digital era information era that we live in. People, and I think that the issue with modern dating and modern culture in general is that everybody is holding on to the past. Everybody is holding on to the ideology of the past. We are in a new era, and people must move into the new era if they don't want to be obsolete. So everybody will have to compromise, especially in the dating hemisphere. You're going to have to compromise. Women want is different from what men want. You're going to have to compromise if you want to win this game, if you want to unite, if you want to maintain family structures. Everybody will have to do that. Compromise.
Mom whining, complaining, or they seen a woman being in an unhealthy situation, and now their fear is the worst case possible scenario.
So here's another worst case possible scenario.
But do you not see how living like that is a problem?
I do understand. I completely agree, but I do think that there's a place for responsibility. And women in relationships, because there is a power dynamic, oftentimes can be put in situations where they can't get out.
I love how he makes it internal. No, it's your fault because the family you come from. No. Turn on the news and look at all the men. Like, did you see the video of the guy that chased the woman into her apartment? Look, it happens so many times. There's another man that beat a woman up on the streets. This happens in society. Men are predatory. That is why women are afraid to put all of their hands into one man, because you don't know if he's going to be a predator deep down.
So here's a problem. You said oftentimes. That is your personal experience.
It's not my personal experience. It's
because the worst case possible scenario plays out in front of our eyes consistently.
I mean, all of my relationships have ended amicably, and I respect all of my exes. I've never been abused, thank God. Mm-hmm. I've never had any negative.
Imagine telling a woman that your need to be independent stems from fear, which is problematic. But I am a man and I deserve independence because that is my right as a man. You see the problem with this kind of rhetoric? It's so problematic. It's saying like, I am superior to you because I was born male, which is the most primitive mentality. That is the mentality of somebody in the industrial era. If you want to live like that, go back to the industrial era. There are countries that are still living in the industrial era. Move to one of those countries. If you want to be in one of the most advanced countries in the world, which is America, you need to get with the times. And what is the times right now? We are all equal. And okay, but let me keep going.
Situation like that where I relied on someone. Never.
So let me tell you why this is your personal experience. Because when it comes to divorce, if you can look it up right now, we have all the data. Women divorce men at higher rates than men divorce women. 70 to 80% of divorces are initiated by women. We have Google right now. We can go ahead and pull it up. Mm-hmm. So the reality of women being left by men is a misnomer. It is feminine mythology.
I'm not talking about. My concern is not being left by a man. My concern is jumping head on into a relationship where I'm feeling like I'm being supported and helped, eventually losing my independence because I'm relying on him. I don't need to work if somebody's paying my rent.
Okay, so why do women divorce men at higher rates than men divorce women? This is such a great question. This is such a great question and great thing to point out, right? When you look at the history of just think about it, right? In the U.S. context. So in the U.S. context, women were only allowed to own credit cards in the 1970s. 1974, the year that women were allowed to own credit cards. 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which granted women the right to obtain credit cards separate from their husbands. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that before 1974, women could not be independent. We were not physically allowed to be independent by law. So what does that mean? That means a woman is completely, utterly dependent on her husband. Utterly dependent on her husband. She does not have the freedom to do as she wants, what she wants, how she wants. So why are women divorcing men more than they were in the 70s, in the 80s. Why? Because now we do not need men for independence. Maybe women want men, like she said, they might want men, but they don't need men. And you'll find more often than not, well, statistics show that single women live longer than married women, but single men live shorter than married men. So what does this say? It says that men typically, historically, men are known for not taking care of themselves the way that women take care of themselves. They don't typically get health checkups and all this stuff, right? So what does that say? It says that men rely on women to keep their home, to take care of them. But now women have realized, look, now that I can be independent, now that I have the rights to do what I want, I don't need a man to survive anymore. So now if a woman is married to a man, the man must meet her standards. And I think what a lot of modern men don't want to accept is they have been lied to and told that they are superior and a woman must meet their own standards. But they're not accepting the fact that they must meet women's standards because now women are leaving. And that's really what it is. Women are leaving because they don't have to put up with trash that women had to deal with in the past.
What does that mean?
So I'm explaining. Wait, I lost my train of thought. What did you say a second ago?
What I said is that
Women are not leaving men.
your fear. You literally said the fear.
Oh, okay. I remember what I was talking about. Okay, my fear isn't that I won't be able to. My fear isn't that my man will leave me. My fear is that I won't be able to leave because I'll be put in a situation where I can't leave.
Okay, so that fear is based upon a worst case scenario. You're living your life on a.
See, it's not helping that they don't bring intelligent, I'm not coming for her, but they're not bringing intelligent women to have these conversations. And then they laugh at her to show the men, to further try and belittle women and say, okay, well, men, look at these women, they're not intelligent. But when it comes down to it, especially in the American context, women are more educated than men in this country. There are high rates of men dropping out of university, high rates. So when it comes down to it, really and truly, if you actually just pick up from a pool of women that are not coming out of the nightclub, but just general women, you will find that they're more intelligent than you, probably.
Worst case scenario. If you take that energy into business, you'll never be successful.
But
if you
relationships...
let me finish. If you take that energy into finances, you'll never have any money. If you take that energy into friendship, you'll never have any friends. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that if you're living your life based upon a scenario that a fearful thing can happen, that's on you. But the wise thing to be is to be like, okay, that's a possibility. So how can I, as a woman, find the right kind of man who will support me?
Every business that survives must have reserves. They must understand, look, we have reserves. We have a system that if this goes busto, this is what we're going to do so that we can build. What is he talking about? Every intelligent Homo sapien, every wise man, especially one that is advancing in society, must have a backup plan, must understand the worst case and the best case for them to advance in their life. And what is living if you're not looking to advance in life?
And help me not make that happen. There's no way possible you're going to find a guy where 100% of the time he will never do anything wrong. So life is a risk. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Number one, I do think that being a woman in the world, you do have to live not in fear. Maybe fear is the wrong word to use, but you do have to be very, very conscious and cautious of all the dangers around you. And relationships can turn dangerous at a certain point. That's number one. I'm not saying I'm living out of fear, not at all. Every relationship that I've been in.
What does that mean, though?
So the irony is, right, the type of man that he's referring to, right, is probably not the guy that earns $200,000. The one that's going to support you and do all these things. It's not the quote unquote high value man. Maybe you'll be lucky, but those ones are too busy sort of looking at spreading their seed and getting as many women as possible, right? This is the disparity that modern women don't understand. It's the guy that earns $50,000. That, well, not all the time, because there are statistics that show that men that don't make as much money as their wives tend to be cheaters, more so than men that are richer than their wives. Yeah. So, not necessarily, but it just seems as though I just feel like I do agree with the rhetoric that modern women should open up their pool and not only look at wealthy men, but I also want to encourage men, especially those that understand that men are known to be predatory. Not only, and as a man, I'm not even talking about you specifically as a man, but think about the men in your lives, right? Think about that and think about how many of them are predators, right? And, just even in your circle. So I'm not saying every man is a predator, but there is a large, a good amount of men that are predators. And what can you do to encourage and influence the men in your surroundings, in your society, not to be predators?
You just said relationships can turn dangerous at a certain point. You know what's very fascinating about this is what you just shared? Mm-hmm. What do you mean by dangerous? You mean domestic violence?
Also.
Okay, so let's talk about domestic violence. You know what's fascinating? Mm-hmm. Do you know domestic violence in lesbian couples are the highest of all couples?
How many percentage of people in the population are lesbian? What? It's such a random thing to bring up. He wants to say, okay, women are abusive too. And yes, that's the case. A lot of women are abusive, especially when they know that their male partner is not going to attack them. It's hard to say pick somebody that's not going to be abusive because you really don't know who's going to be abusive or not. But let's keep going.
Whether it's lesbians or straights or anything, it doesn't matter. Being in a relationship where you're relying 100% where you're codependent is unhealthy, in my opinion.
Codependent.
Respectfully.
See, this is what happens when you create strawmans. When you make an extreme. So on one end of the extreme is codependency, where I have nothing without you. Another end of the extreme is where you're probably at, independency. I am without you. But the healthy medium is interdependency, is that I could exist without you, but I not only want you, but
interdependency makes sense when it comes down to it, because you think about a two-parent household, when there are children involved, it's always better when both there are two people supporting each other in that environment, right? And that's the thing. When it comes down to building a family, independence, it should be looked at as a unit. One family is one unit, and as that family should be independence. I think that once you have children and once you have a family, both parties, man and woman, have to let go of their individual independence. Because it's not about you anymore. You don't own your time anymore. As when you have, when you have these obligations, you don't have your time anymore. And I think it should be looked at as a family that is independent, but with individuals that are not independent. The same way that when you look at a company, the company is an independent company. It's running itself. But every single employee is a component, a piece to the puzzle that helps that company run. And that's what I think families should look like. Both men and women working together in this family structure, right? And they're both interdependent, right?
I need you.
So can I say...
Let me finish. Because I'm be honest with you, right now, the energy that you're on is masculine energy.
Oh God, no.
No, why? Because
it's so interesting that is called masculine energy. Because I think about, when you think about cavemen, and you think about how they would everybody was hunting for food. Everyone was hunting for food. Everybody was, trying to be independent, right? Were they called masculine then? So why is it not feminine for you to be a go-getter, for you to be an achiever? Why is that not feminine energy? And I think as women, we must redefine what feminine energy is. And I think that modern men need to understand that the rules are changing and we must evolve with the times. That's my 2 cents.
Oh
Because you're comfortable. And this is the problem. You're comfortable with having to usurp your way. So a lot of times there's no when there's a relationship, when women say they want equality, there's no equality. There's no two kings in one castle. There's no two presidents in one country.
That's another problem when men want to be quote unquote the king of the castle, the head of the ship. That is, to me, ridiculous. And I think that sort of family structure worked in the industrial era when, again, women didn't have the right to hold credit cards. But in this modern era, right, especially in the information era, this idea of being a king in a castle, you could be a king in the castle, but you're going to be alone in that castle. There's going to be no one in that castle. And I think when you look at the most powerful couples, I'm talking about Beyonce, Jay-Z, I'm talking about Will and Jada, I'm talking about Obama and Michelle. It's the woman that appears to be the head of that household, right? And so you'll find that a lot of people that demand to be the king in their castle and don't have the same arrangement as like a Jay-Z and Beyonce or Michelle and Barack, perhaps you should look to them. If you really want to be a king, you should want to be the king of the best castle, right? So you should be striving to be the greatest, right? Your greatest self, right? So why don't you look at Michelle and Obama and ask yourself why there are not enough couples like that, right? And I think I would say most successful marriages that I've seen, the woman always appears to be the head of that household. But I'm not advocating for there to be a head, because I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, the man is also leading. But I think that there is a level of equality that is built in these healthy family structures that I've seen. But I'm just going to give it a little bit, and then I'm going to come out of this video.
There's no two CEOs of one company. There's always a leader, and somebody submits to your leadership. You want to be in charge.
I don't. I absolutely don't. I will say my dating style, I love a man who will support me, lift me up, help me. But at the same time, I'm not going to relinquish all of my power.
I understand it, but what I'm saying is that what you're communicating is an idea which you feel like you represent. But I'm telling you right now, from even communicating with you, from this conversation, talk to hundreds of women, the energy that you have is very masculine energy.
Oh my God.
You can say all that you want, but the idea is you want.
Anyway, we're done with this. But yeah, so a lot of these YouTubers, they should ask themselves why they haven't achieved, they're not on track. They talk about being ambitious, being go-getters, being whatever. And you're supposed to be this like head of the household. What can you learn from Barack Obama? What can you learn from Beyonce and Jay-Z? What can you learn from Will and Jada? What can you learn? And ask yourselves, why are they more successful than you? Right? Since this is sort of like, I want to be the head, ask yourselves that, right? We look at Will and Jada, we know that Jada gave up her career for Will Smith, right? But we see their relationship in the house. She's the head. To the world, he's the head, right? We see their relationship. It's clear that but I'm sure at the end of the day, it's a partnership. He's providing a lot of the money. And it made sense for her to let him lead in his career, simply because, especially when he was blowing up, there was no place for a black female actress to be a superstar the way that Will Smith became that. So that was not even a sacrifice based on, you're the man, let me give you the role. No, it was a sacrifice based on the fact that the way society was built, look, it's a better bet for both of them to win if they let him win. Just as Jay-Z has sat down and let Beyonce lead. People actually call him the spouse. They don't even call him by his name. They don't even acknowledge his many achievements. So when it comes to Michelle and Barack, everybody loves her more than him. Nobody even cares about him, and he accepts that. So a lot of times, these people that are looking to be kings, they're not ready to. When you're so preoccupied with getting this title of king, you're not ready to let a woman shine. And that's another reason why these women, don't want to relinquish their power. Because if you're going to be somebody that's going to try and overshadow them for the desire or need to be the quote unquote king, well, that's going to be problematic. Let your woman shine. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. My name is Kenim, and see you next time. Peace.